This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with my co-host, Jesse Garcia. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, County Chair of the Suffolk County Party, and with us is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and political essayist. Gentlemen, there seems to be problems in the Democratic Party. I don't know if you heard about those.
I forgot.
You forgot. You had a Biden moment. Yeah. So look, Biden has a debate, which he called for because his numbers were bad in the polls. He goes against Trump. Trump, all he had to do was just stand there and let Biden implode. Trump had to behave himself by not exploding. He behaved himself. Now the Democrats are in a panic mode, as they should be, because they now realize that having tried to snooker the American people with the aiding and abetting of the media and the elite establishment, that Biden was up to the game and up to being the leader of the free world, they now realize that the president's new clothes are being shown, and he's stark naked. And then the problem is that the cover-up they want to use, literally and figuratively, is Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, somebody who is an identity politics official, only picked because she was a minority woman, has no real accomplishments either prior to being Vice President of the United States or while the President, Vice President of the United States.
She has a lot of failures.
She has a lot of failures. Well, after all, she was the border czar. But she can't speak the English language properly. Every time she talks nonsense and word salad.
But she has a comforting laugh.
Her laugh is one of the excruciating things I've ever heard, John, I have to say. Just awful. But yet the Democrats are in this quandary. And as Gerard Baker, the Wall Street Journal, in a column said, the Democrats deserve this, but the country doesn't. And that's my problem. But Biden is actually playing a very strong game so far. He refuses to get off the stage. He's being abandoned in pieces, yet he seems to be holding on. He's rallied Schumer around him. Hakeem Jeffries, is the would-be Speaker of the House of Representatives, is still backing his play. Pelosi is making noises both ways. It's hard to figure out. She's hedging her bets. There are about 8 members of the House who've come out directly and say he has to leave. Some senators, Democratic senators, are making the move. But the man is holding on. And I think, gentlemen, what he is doing is he's letting the clock run out. He has a strategy. The longer he can delay this, the more difficult it is to make the replacement. If he goes into the next 6 weeks and he holds on, then he will control what happens, his fate or Kamala's fate, in the convention. So, for example, he can win the nominations because these people are committed to him, in the most part, legally or morally. And if he wants to hand it over to somebody, he can do it. And he's got to hand it over to Kamala Harris because the Democratic Party is, after all, the party of identity politics. They're not going to take it away from her, as unqualified as she may be. So this is the problem. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are this is a crisis by the making of the Democratic Party. It's a self-inflicted wound. This is something that the Democratic Party knew about. It was what the mainstream media knew about it. Many of us knew about it, but their partners and their cohorts in all these industries were covering it up. So, you say there's 6 weeks to hold on. 6 weeks, 1 week in politics is tough to hold on. We've seen this now almost 2 weeks since the debate. And Biden has tried on several occasions, whether it be a phone-in interview, a press conference, leading NATO, jumping on a donor phone call, or the ill-fated, Stephanopoulos interview to gain ground and bring this to a conclusion. And it's not. Just this week, as we were taping this, George Clooney lit this fire again with an op-ed piece in the New York Times. There was a calling for him to step aside. The New York Times doubled down on their initial editorial for Biden to step down. We've seen the Hollywood elitists now coming out and donors saying he should step down, and the president is being defiant about it. What we're seeing here, though, is we're seeing the politics of self-centeredness and selfishness. There's a deep divide amongst the Democrats because the House, in its self-interest, wants to make Hakeem Jeffries the speaker, and they see that the Biden travesty is going to impede that. We also now see that the Senate races, which may have been 50-50, maybe now tipping our way. I think Donald Trump, for all that he's doing, which is nothing, is playing this right. The elitists, the Democrats themselves are eating themselves from the inside right now. But I have to tell you, you mentioned that Jeffries and Schumer came to his defense. I think they came to his defense far too slowly. They had to poll their caucus memberships. They had to see where they were going, and yet that's still not stemming the tide. We have been seeing, though, Speaker Emeritus, Pelosi, goes on The View goes on, MSNBC or CNN and says that it's up to the president to decide when asked if she would support him. And she gave a wishy-washy answer saying it's up to him. We ask again, and she had to backtrack. Nadler, a prominent New York Republican Democrat, came out and said he should resign. He should step down and not campaign any longer over the weekend. He changed his tune when he got to D.C. There's a lot of divides being demonstrated right now. The Republicans are playing this right. They're letting the Democrats eat their own. But there are many losers in this competition. And maybe after we hear from Eric, we'll go into that list of losers.
Eric.
So the lead-in to me is losers. Is that what you're saying?
That happens.
That's one of the best.
Well, Eric, he can't be a winner every time.
One of the best segues of all time.
After this, other than the Democratic Party in general.
Yeah, it gives me a real smile. You talk about Chuck Schumer, the position he's taking.
Yes.
The idea that Chuck Schumer is a leader of anything is such an oxymoron. This is a guy who always waits to see which way the wind is blowing, and then he'll just go with it. And when the winds change, he'll just go with it again. Jerry Nadler. The next time Jerry Nadler takes a principled position or an intelligent position,
it'll be the first time.
He'll be the first.
It'll be
the first time. Yeah.
So these are the people you're looking to as to how the Democratic Party is going to get itself out of this mess, and that just speaks volumes. Look, Joe Biden is infirm. He's addled. There's no two ways about it. Every president, even the most engaged, run the risk of being isolated from reality and the general public and the pulse of the nation. So when you are infirm and addled and isolated, you're even that much more removed. Then you lay on top of that Joe Biden is obtuse. So that makes it even more complicated. Then you lay on top of it, you have people intentionally running interference for him to insulate him from what's going on in the world, in particular, Dr. Jill Biden, who has earned the enmity, distrust, and hate of the American people, but she has no interest in what's best for them. She's only interested in what's best for her. And then you have the great advisor of Hunter Biden, a convicted felon, a tax dodger, and a gun possessor, and a junkie, and a congenital liar. So these are the people that are giving advice. And then you two gentlemen were pointing out 100% correctly. The media has a great role, has a lot to answer for in this case. They see him every day. They talk to him every day, and they see the degeneration. And they had either willful blindness, or they just completely lied to us. And then you have the Democrat elected officials and appointed officials in the administration that Biden has surrounded himself with. Take Coombs, Senator Coombs from Delaware, for example. He's one of Joe Biden's closest friends and advisors. He would go on the Sunday talk show every day telling us of all the accomplishments and the wonderment of Joe Biden and how vital the guy is and how engaged he is. Of course, always between the hours of 8 and 6 and always behind closed doors. But people like Senator Coombs have a great deal to answer for because they were running interference for this guy. They were lying to our faces every day of the week about Joe Biden's capabilities. They deserve what they get. But America does not deserve this. America deserves a president who can function. Now, so the question is, should Joe Biden resign today? The answer is he should resign today because he's not qualified to be president. And whether or not Kamala Harris is the right choice, I would argue that she is an utter failure. She has no accomplishments. She has great failures. She has done nothing to qualify herself to be president of the United States. But at least she is sensate. She has the mental capacity, at least to understand what she is doing. I think her policies would be awful. I think her judgment is terrible. But that is better than having someone who does not understand what he is doing from moment to moment, leading the free world with his finger on the button. That just can't be the case. But what is the practical reality of whether Joe Biden will drop out, and if so, when? I will go on the record today and let the record show I believe that Joe Biden will be the nominee for president for the Democratic Party. Now, if because he is digging in his heels and he's not going anywhere, and whoever they are, can't force him out unless he agrees to go. He has the delegates. He's going to get the nomination. If, however, he is going to drop out, it will not happen before August 9th. What happens on August 9th? I think we've discussed this on the show the last time. Ohio law requires that for you to be on the ballot for president, you have to be nominated before August 9th. If Joe Biden were to drop out today and they were to kick the nomination to the convention isn't until after August 9th. So they would have no nominee on the ballot in Ohio. The Democrats would be completely giving up on Ohio. There is no way they're going to do that. The other thing is, Joe Biden is sitting on, the Biden-Harris campaign is sitting on $230 million of cash. My understanding is that money cannot be transferred to anyone other than Kamala Harris. And then only if after Biden becomes the nominees.
That's my understanding as well.
So they have to be the nominees. The only way he can hand it off to Kamala is if he becomes the nominee. And if he's the nominee, there's no way he's stepping down. So I really just don't see it. This is a problem of their own making, of the Democrats' making, by lying to the nation. It should never have happened, but this is where we are, and the nation is all the poorer for it. And I have to say, the opportunity for our enemies between now and January 20th is going to be enormous.
We'll talk about that a little while. I just want to say this, and then I want to get Jesse's take about losers and winners in this.
At least you didn't mention my name with loser.
No. You're a winner. Absolutely, you're a winner. Jesse and I absolutely convinced you're a winner. Look, the seemingly question should always be that the monstrous question that everybody should be concerned about: who is best fit to be president of the United States and protect and defend this country, its citizens, and our national interests? That should be the question. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. We are. No, you, the three of us are. I am saying to you, it's enormously frustrating to listen. This is all about electoral polls and who's going to win the House, and who's going to win the Senate, who's going to control the White House. It's all about the politics of the moment, Jesse and Erica. It's not about who can protect and defend this country and take care of us. And that's an enormous problem. We've lost sight of what this role is. This is a dangerous world, which we'll get into. We need strong, able leadership, and nobody's talking about this. They're looking at the polls. They're seeing how he handles himself at an event. So they're looking at the NATO conference that's going on now. They'll look at his press conference tomorrow. They'll make these judgments. But as Eric points out, they can't drive the guy out. He has to willfully resign himself after he has the nomination. So, Jesse, on losers and winners, who do you think?
Well, the biggest loser, I think, in this situation, other than the Democratic Party, is the mainstream media. They are part and parcel have been part of the Biden Protection Pact they have reached with the White House. They interviewed and they opined, they interviewed organizational Democrats. They reported how lucid, how engaged, how forceful he was in meetings. And then all that came crumbling down. Their narrative, their false narrative, and the fact that they are in the pocket of the Democratic elitists and the Democratic Party came crumbling down when 51 million Americans saw with their own eyes what the true condition of our president is. That's the biggest loser we have here, first and foremost. The other loser, unfortunately, I think are the American people, because both of you gentlemen have said we don't have a commander-in-chief anymore. And certainly, I don't know if national security, we should be concerned about national security between now and December 31st.
We should be very worried. We should be very
worried, but I'm very worried before 10 a.m. and after 4 p.m. I mean, never in my thoughts would I would think that Biden would tell a contingent of Democrat governors that were doing a well check on him last week that he needs more rest, needs a nap, and I'm good between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and I'm not doing anything after 8.
He skipped a NATO meeting to go to sleep.
Exactly.
Not this time, a couple of years
ago. Not this time, previously.
In Germany, right. And he stood up the Chancellor of Germany. Right.
That they lied to the press about. Now, listen, the White House has been lying to the press for years, the Obama years, the Clinton years, and certainly the Biden years. But never has the press ever been exposed like Joe Biden in that debate exposed the press in one fell swoop, 90 minutes.
Yeah, and
he showed them that they were part and parcel of this protection pact.
Right.
But I will tell you, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's right. I think the problem is now, having been exposed, they're trying to reinvent history in a most Orwellian sense by calling him out and saying he should resign. That's the Post, or Washington Post, or the Times.
Or claiming they weren't aware.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not be aware?
What a crock.
I mean, how could you not be aware? In fact,
what I also want to believe is how can now Joe Biden, number one, he's doubled down. He has said on numerous occasions, he met with union leaders earlier this week.
He's playing it smart. He's playing it very smart.
The Hispanic caucus has come out in support of him. The Black caucus has come out for him. Two very influential organizations within the Democratic Party. But the matter here is, how long can he stay on? Because now you've seen what's going on. The elitists of the Democratic Party, the true 1% of the 1% of the 1% of America, who tries to control narratives, industries. They're the ones that believe in this Green New Deal. They believe in a nanny state, that the government should be the biggest contributor in industry. They want to take away liberties and freedoms and so forth. They want to, because they have so much wealth, they want to spread, the wealth of others to other people. These people are now coming out, the George Clooney's of the world. They are the canary in the coal mine trying to set the stage. And, we'll see in the next couple, you say 6 weeks, I'm wondering if this is now a day-by-day assault on the Democratic presumptive nominee, nominee, as you pointed out.
Yeah, look, if Biden holds on, and I think he will, and he'll be the nominee,
so do I.
All these people will start lining up again, because then they'll say, oh no, it can't be Trump. Okay. So then they'll all start lining up again. So
I agree. All right, we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us for more interesting conversation. We'll be back in just a moment.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, political essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. And we're back, gentlemen. So, this is the most important question, and I raised it in our first segment, but I want people to focus on this because this is essential. If you vote, let's assume, work on the proposition, the premise, that Joe Biden will in fact be the nominee of the Democratic Party and that Kamala Harris will be the nominee of the Democratic Party as his vice presidential candidate. So you have, once again, a Biden-Harris ticket. Let's focus on that for a minute. Now, Rich Lowry of the National Review has pointed out, as did Eric Levine's very close friend, Nikki Haley, has pointed out, if you're voting for Joe Biden, you're really voting for Kamala Harris as president. That's based on, one, he'll either hand over the nomination to her after he's a designee of the party, and he'll do it at the convention, or he will not make it through the full 4-year term if he's reelected. So in essence, when you go into the voting booth and you pull down the lever for Biden-Harris, you are making a definitive decision about who the next leader of the free world will be, and that will be Kamala Harris. And that's a very, very scary and dangerous proposition to me. I mean, it's being finessed by the Democratic Party. You're not going to have a choice on this. If she does become president, she's going to be an unelected president if she succeeds to the office upon his death, disability, or resignation. And then she's going to pick somebody as vice president who will also be unelected. So what you're talking about is 4 years hence, you're talking about an unelected president of the United States, an unelected vice president of the United States.
Well, there's precedent for that.
There is precedent for that. And it's very, very scary about who that will be, because the Democratic Party is controlled by the left wing, by the extreme progressives. And you're really going to hand over the future of this great republic to the left-wing progressives who dominate, control the Democratic Party? The future of the free world and of this country is in the hands of these people who will be unelected as president and vice president of the United States. Now, Biden's argument is, well, he's fighting for democracy. What kind of democracy is that? And by the way, he says he has all these votes because people voted for him during the primary season. That's because the Democratic Party shut down all competition, changed all the rules, so there was no competition against Biden. If people had known the state of his physical health and his mental health, if they'd known the dire condition this gentleman is in, do you really think you'd have gotten all those votes during the primary season? Or could you have had a real candidate? So the abysmal moral turpitude of Joe and Jill Biden by not declining to go again a year ago and opening up the process so you could have some people in the Democratic Party who could compete on the merits, and you know what they stood for and who they were and what their qualifications were, is a telling failure on their part. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a couple of historical references we should pick up on. So when we say, if we elect Joe Biden, we're electing Kamala Harris. Maybe not. There's precedent. Woodrow Wilson was incapacitated for a very long period of time, and his wife ran the country. We didn't know it at the time, but when the history books were written and the people who were in the administration told the story, Mrs. Wilson, Edith Wilson, was president of the United States. So I guess the answer to the question is what happens if Joe Biden wins? The answer is either Jill Biden or Kamala Harris will be president. So we don't know the answer to that. On the other point, in terms of having unelected presidents, we've had that before. Remember when Richard Nixon resigned, Gerald Ford became president. This was after Spiro Agnew had resigned as vice president. Nixon picked Gerald Ford, who was not elected. Ford then became president and then picked Nelson Rockefeller to be vice president. A lot of people don't remember that. Nelson Rockefeller, former governor of New York, was actually vice president.
Yeah, but those were both high-quality people.
They were high-quality people, but there is precedent for having unelected people become president. I'm not saying it because, therefore, we should do this again, but I'm just pointing out that this has happened before. And then, of course, Gerald Ford lost to Jimmy Carter. So what does that tell us? The bottom line is Joe Biden is not qualified to be president. There's really not too much more to talk about in that regard, and he should resign today for the good of the country, but he won't. And to your question of is Kamala Harris have the capacity to be president? She absolutely has the capacity to be president, because capacity is a medical term. It's a medical term. Does she have her faculties? She has her faculties. The question is whether or not she is qualified to be president.
Does she have the judgment and the experience?
She doesn't have the judgment. She doesn't have the experience. Her policies are horrible. She's not a likable person. There's really nothing that lends herself to being president of the United States or leader of the free world, but she has the capacity. So as a legal matter, she would take over and there'd be no way to remove her unless and until there was, until the next election. But this is the quandary we are in. But this is why Biden should resign today.
Jesse.
I think you're right. And I agree with you. I think a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris as president. And I think the American people are seeing that. And what they're seeing, they're not liking. Let's not forget that Kamala Harris has got poll numbers that are just as bad, if not worse, than Joe Biden's. They're both underwater by a 43% favorable for the president and a 42% unfavorable for the vice president there. But this is an individual that is there simply, as we pointed out, because the Democratic Party is the
Jesse,
party. Jesse,
you're zipping in and out on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sitting right where I am.
I'd hate for you to be sitting somewhere you weren't.
That's right. Having a Biden moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to listen. That's technology, so that's a cheap fake. Anyway, but going through this, I mean, her poll numbers are just as bad. She is not viewed popular by any way. Her policies, as pointed out by both you gentlemen, have been deemed as a failure. Remember, this was the border czar. She was appointed to be the head of the task force to secure the border. And what's happened? An epic, critical failure. 13 million illegal immigrants, migrants have run across the border. Her first test in leadership, she failed. And she's only failed.
It's only a failure. It's only a failure if your goal is to secure the border. If your goal is to have an open border, she succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. And that, in fact, I think was the goal.
70% of the American people want to feel safe and they want a secure border. I think that the American people are telling us that she failed in that one job. It's considering that I think she visited the border once in 3.5 years.
Well, she didn't go to Europe either.
Right. That's right.
So. Yeah, exactly. But the other thing is, don't forget, she's there because, as we pointed out, she checked ideological boxes of the Democratic Party, and she is there because the man who saved the Biden nomination in 2020, Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, delivered the Black Caucus, delivered to South Carolina after Biden had lost 3 primaries and caucuses leading up to that. And that's what turned the tide for Joe Biden. Jim Clyburn asked for a Kamala Harris-like person to be the vice president. That commitment was made. She's not there because she delivers a state. She's not there for electoral policy. She's not there for policy. She is there as a deal reached by Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, who controls a significant portion of the Democratic base and the organization in the DNC. And that's why she's there. And that's why he has said, point blank, he's with Joe Biden. But if Joe Biden steps aside, it's Kamala Harris. He's made that very clear. The Civil War will not be able to take place. And as Eric pointed out, we discussed in a couple of weeks, over the last 2 weeks, it is Kamala Harris who will be able to secure that funding that's there. The DNC can use its money that was carried in joint fundraising for the Democratic nominee, but she is the one that controls, because her name's on the paperwork for that fundraising committee. That is Biden-Harris.
Absolutely correct. Let me switch gears, because a reference was made by one of you two gentlemen to the border. So let me tell you something that's very, very interesting and very troubling. There's a proposed piece of legislation brought by the Republicans, both in the House and the Senate. It's called the SAFE Act. What is that about? That's about making sure that in a federal election, non-citizens cannot vote. Let me say that again. Why should we even have this discussion, since the Constitution makes it clear that you have to be a citizen to vote in a federal election? But they're trying to put in the guarantees about non-citizens doing this because there's an effort on the part of Democrats to pad the rolls, because they give out absentee ballots without checking the citizenship. And there's no way to double check that. Understand what I just said. There's no way when you're mailing in or handing out absentee ballots and then you add on the factor of drop boxes where you just drop them in, who is actually voting.
And, you add in the factor that you can't require an ID for voting.
And you can't have an ID. So what you're talking about is you're setting this up. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you're setting this up. And Carter was part of a commission that studied this with former Secretary of State Baker. There's no doubt that absentee ballots and drop boxes are formulas and devices for election fraud. So the Republicans, to their credit, are trying to limit this ability and making it perfectly clear that there have to be protections against non-citizens voting. And Biden, to his shame, and to discredit the Democratic Party and the leadership of the Democratic Party in both the House and the Senate, has said if that bill passes, he's going to veto it. Now, why would somebody want to veto something that fulfills the obligation of the United States Constitution that only citizens can vote in a federal election? Because this is the one thing we have to understand. The states on their own account cannot regulate who votes in a federal election. That has to be done by Congress. They can decide who votes in the local and the state races, but on the federal elections, the state does not have that authority. So when I say to you that this is an opportunity for the worst kind of fraud, a lack of integrity in the voting process, a lack of commitment to doing the right thing and to ensure that people will abide by the results and be satisfied with them, how are you going to be satisfied with it if a piece of legislation like this is zapped by Biden? It works in his self-interest. So for all the people who say, oh, there's no connection between the Democrats having an open border and non-citizens voting, it's just a conspiracy theory, that's nonsense. It is the truth.
It's the whole reason why they want the open border.
Of course, open border gives them it pads them.
Their theory is, whether time will tell if they're right, but the theory is if you get enough illegal aliens or enough people in from Latin and South America or from anywhere in the world, that those people will necessarily be Democrat voters. That may or may not be true, but that's certainly their premise. And precisely because of that, that's why they want the open border. They fundamentally want to change who votes in elections so that they can change the direction of the country.
And as the three of us have discussed previously, the problem, of course, is when you have all these people and they're counted as part of the census, even though they're not citizens, that disrupts a fair count of the allocation of seats in the House of Representatives. And that weakens some states, strengthens others, and it gives a disproportionate influence to the Democratic Party. It stabilizes their influence in certain states, which would otherwise be more competitive. And why is that important? Because Congress is the one who sets the budget and deals with the issue of revenues. And the fact of the matter is, being in the House of Representatives and having control of the House, because all budget initiatives start in the House, not the Senate, this is a very, very big deal. It will disrupt a fair accounting of the House of Representatives. So there's a lot at play here, and Democrats always work on one assumption. And what's that assumption? That if you give enough free stuff, you'll get those people to vote for you. And historically, they haven't been wrong. So let's take a break. This is Let the Record Show. We'll be back in a few moments with Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, Jesse Garcia, the vice chair of the state Republican Party, county chair of the Suffolk Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in just a few moments for more interesting conversation on Let the Record Show.
This is Let the Record Show.
Five immersive worlds, one amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe, now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Tell Me What Happened is a podcast series that shares dramatic stories of people helping people, and every one of them is true. These uplifting stories will fill you with hope. Listen today to Tell Me What Happened.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength, Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney, Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Before we get into the foreign policy issues, I just want to raise this. Our good friend Andy McCarthy, who writes both the National Review and the New York Post, and is a commentator very often on Fox and Fox Business, had a couple of very interesting columns. The substance of these columns is as follows: that Judge Marchand, the state Supreme Court judge, who is the presiding judge in the Bragg prosecution, indeed persecution of Donald Trump on trumped-up charges, forgive the expression, nonsense charges.
I never heard that before.
You never heard that before. You heard it right here on Let the Record Show. Let me be clear. That's a case that never should have been brought. Marchand never should have been the presiding judge. He should have recused himself because of conflicts he had and his daughter have. They should have changed the venue. Bragg bolstered this by taking a misdemeanor and making it a felony. He did everything was wrong. All the rulings on the evidence were wrong. He denied Trump's defense the ability to put in experts on federal election law, which shows all the claims against Trump are nonsense. There were a myriad number of reasons why this was a bad case from beginning through now. Now, Andy McCarthy points out the recent Supreme Court decisions, Supreme Court of the United States, have made it very, very clear there are even more reasons now, while if we look at it carefully, and if Marchand is an honest judge and takes his responsibilities properly, he should dismiss. Number one, there was not unanimous verdict on the counts. And that in itself is defective. And the Supreme Court of the United States, in another case, made it very, very clear you can't do that. When you have a criminal conviction, you have to have unanimity. There was no special verdict, so you don't know how these people voted. He fundamentally said pick from column A, column B, column C, and this was not a Chinese restaurant. This was a criminal trial. So he violated that. Supreme Court says you can't do that. You have to have unanimity. What was another problem? Another problem is he allowed testimony in about the official acts of Trump talking to Sessions during his presidency, which raises the issue of immunity. So that's a very big deal as well. And the third thing is this. You're not allowed to stretch and overreach in a criminal prosecution statutes. It's not for a prosecutor to overreach and so broaden a statute that you deny people due process when they're defendants. And there was a case on that involving the January 6th defendants, and that's called the Fisher case. So for all three of those reasons, separately, each one, together, certainly, the right thing for Juan Marchand, the Justice of the State Supreme Court, to do is to enter a trial order of acquittal. And what will that do? It will clean up the record, get that nonsense case behind us, and it will not lend ourselves open to another trial hanging over this country and of President Trump. And it will give us the benefit of double jeopardy, which means you can't try the case again. Eric, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that if past practice is any indication of future results, none of that will happen. Marchand will not reverse himself. It would require him to admit an error. He's obviously demonstrated that he believes himself infallible. And I don't think, Andy McCarthy, I think, is right on all these points, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's going to be up to the appellate division.
All right. Your thoughts, Jesse?
I tend to agree with Eric. I believe that this judge is too far along into this. I think to rule to reverse himself is not characteristic of him. Even though maybe he has, as Andy McCarthy has written, the cover of the Supreme Court decision. I just believe he's been an activist judge from day one. As you pointed out, all the reasons why he should not have been presiding over this case. And this case should never have been brought. It's been a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it's nothing more than a political sham witch hunt to stop a political opponent. The one thing we should point out to the listeners is that along with everything that you pointed out about how this trial should never have been brought and what lengths they went to bring this, that anybody who thinks that this was not in coordination with the Biden administration needs to be reminded the number 3 person in the Biden Department of Justice suddenly quit his job and joined the Manhattan DA's office for this case specifically. This has been, and clearly the first of many examples of the Democrats and Joe Biden willfully weaponizing institutions of government against political enemies.
Okay, let's switch gears. Gentlemen, let's talk about America being at a crossroads. I say they're challenged by foreign adversaries and domestic divisions. In my lifetime, I haven't seen such a domestic division, even including during the problems with the Vietnam War. I think this is far, far worse. And we're challenged by foreign adversaries who were united in their goal of destroying this country. Just in the last day or so, we've learned that now Russia and China are working on war games in Europe. We find out that Russia and Modi, who's the prime minister of India, are embracing each other when Modi goes to Moscow for a visit. These are very, very dangerous times. We have the open borders that we don't know who these folks are coming in. You have fifth columns working against us. They're well-funded. You have somewhere between 15 and 30,000 Chinese military-age men running around. You have the cartels running around. You have the gangs in our streets. These are very serious times. You have naive kids who are raging anti-Semites and anti-Israel, which is our greatest ally in the Middle East and maybe in the whole world.
And anti-American. They're all
anti-American, too. And the possibility of real violence from these insurrectionists, though the real insurrectionists are innumerable as we go forward. So these are real challenges for us. So on America being at the crossroads. What do you say, Eric?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen a challenge like this since the 1930s and 1940s, when at the time it was Germany, Japan, and Italy. Today, the Axis powers are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The question, and they are working. These are revanchist powers, and they're working diligently to undermine the law-based American-led world order. And they're succeeding because America is not defending itself. It's not defending its allies. The United States has to make the decision. Is the American-led world order, is our national security worth fighting for? I argue yes. And if that's the case, then we need to do what's necessary. We need to rebuild our military. We need to start striking fear in the heart of our enemies. We need to make our allies secure and be able to sleep at night knowing that America has their back. None of this is happening. The perfect example, of course, is Israel. I mean, Joe Biden has imposed an weapons embargo on Israel, not in the classic sense of saying we're not sending you anything, but in the sense that we're going to just slow walk it to you so that you don't get it right when you need it, so as to maximize America's ability to influence Israel's ability to conduct the war. This isn't how you treat your allies. This isn't how you strike fear in the hearts of your enemies. You empower your enemies. And then, of course, the best example is the appeasement of Iran while we are undermining Israel. And this all starts, if you keep working backwards, to the catastrophic surrender in Afghanistan. The world watched that and was horrified. Our allies were horrified. I mean, are we better off aligning ourselves? The calculation around the world is, are we better off aligning ourselves with the United States or aligning ourselves with the emerging powers of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea? And that's a real problem. Now, I just want to take a little issue with your point about India, Modi going to Russia. Modi went to Russia in large part to neutralize China. India sees China as its primary competitor, and they're trying to put a wedge between Russia and China. So I don't see that as a real problem. I see actually there's a lot of positive things that can come of that. I mean, India buys most of its weapons or a large part of its weapons from Israel. It's become a pretty important ally for the United States because the United States wants to check China and Pakistan. So I'm not all that concerned with Modi going to Russia. But I am very concerned about China's and Russia's war games in Europe. I am very concerned about Russia's role in the Middle East that Obama gave him the foothold in after he wouldn't enforce the red line. I am very concerned about the appeasement of Iran because it tells our Arab allies, our Sunni Arab allies, that you may have to start making peace with the Iranians because the United States are not reliable. And I am concerned about North Korea sending missiles to Russia and Iran sending drones to Russia. And I am very concerned about the United States' tepid support for Ukraine. It should be much more aggressive, in my view. We need to get weapons there much more quickly. We need to stop micromanaging Ukraine's war against Russia, allowing them the opportunity to win the war as opposed to just holding on to not lose the war, which seems to be the Biden strategy in Israel. It's the Biden strategy in Ukraine. And ultimately, of course, if China were to invade Taiwan, I have no doubt that it would be the Biden strategy in Taiwan. But unless you can impose fear and a deterrent impact on your adversaries, they're just going to take advantage of you. And you see this every single day. The American-led world order is unraveling before our eyes. It's not foreordained or predestined that this is going to happen. We have to fight for this. We have to fight for this, and we need to fight for this every day and do whatever is necessary to make sure that the American-led world order stands. It's what gives us, it safeguards our national security, it safeguards our economy, it safeguards our allies, and it's the only way to ensure peace. Unless there's a strong America, unless the United States is a reliable ally, the world is going to fall into chaos. And notwithstanding what the progressive left thinks about the systemic racism and the evilness of the United States, or the isolationist right thinks about, how wonderful we are and the rest of the world doesn't deserve our largesse, If America retreats from the world, bad things fill that vacuum. And eventually they cross the oceans and they come here. And unless we're prepared to defend it, we're screwed.
Jesse, I want to get your thoughts on 3 questions, and they're all related. The first question, Jesse, does America have the ability to maintain its leadership in world affairs? The second one is, do our allies trust us? And the third one is, do our enemies fear us? So what are your thoughts on those issues, Jesse?
My thoughts are that America has retreated from its position of leading leading globally. And it has the ability to do that. I'm a fervent supporter and believer in the American spirit, in the American exceptionalism, in the American-led order of our globe. And that's because I have great faith and belief in the American people. To achieve that, though, we need more than any time other, we need new leadership for America. Joe Biden is playing electoral politics on the world stage and through his foreign policy. He's a captive of the left and he's a captive of the liberals. To answer your question about, do our allies trust us? They don't. They simply don't. Ask Israel. Ask the Ukraine, where we had a slow start. And as Eric pointed out, in both those wars and in every conflict, the United States is trying to micromanage those wars, and we simply cannot. We have to be all in, or we have to be all out. Because of presidential politics, Biden, a captive of his liberal left, is trying to straddle this line, and it's not successful. In fact, it's making the situation worse. Do our enemies fear us? Absolutely not. Say what you would. Our enemies respected and feared leaders like Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump. They may have not spoken in the same way. They may have not conducted themselves and is what a mainstream president at both eras dictated or expected. But they got the job done because they put the interests of the American people first and our sovereignty. And I believe that one of the things that we can just demonstrate that the fact that our enemies don't fear us, because there's been no pushback when it comes to China flying spy balloons across the width of this country. And certainly something we've talked about on the show, and Eric pointed out, we referenced it earlier in this hour, the travesty of the withdrawal of Afghanistan. America is shown to be weak because of its policies and its president. It needs to change. So are we at a crossroads? We certainly are. Are we able to lead again on the world stage? Absolutely. But it takes a change in leadership. I have faith in the American spirit, the American people, and the American exceptionalism. And I think when there is new leadership that puts the interests of Americans first, America first interest, not isolationism, but an American-led order, that our enemies will once again fear us.
Eric.
Well, what more can you say? I mean, Joe Biden, I think this goes back to the beginning of the unraveling of the American-led world order, goes back to the Obama administration. We all remember his apology tour, the first day he goes around and actually apologizes to France for American hubris. I mean, France. I mean, it saved the country twice.
France?
But we're apologizing to the French. But he goes to the Arab countries and he's bowing and he's scraping. But I think the speech that really tipped the scales, that really showed his hand, was when he was asked, Barack Obama was asked by a reporter, do you believe in American exceptionalism? And his answer was, yeah, I believe in American exceptionalism, like the British believe in British exceptionalism and Greece believes in Greek exceptionalism. In other words, to Obama, America's like any other country. He didn't understand, and this is, this has just picked up momentum through his 2 terms, and it's just in hyperdrive in the Biden administration, that American exceptionalism means that America is the indispensable nation in keeping peace around the world, in safeguarding democracy and liberty around the world. And if your view is that America is like any other country, then America is not unique and has no role in protecting the liberty and the safety of the world. And that's just wrong. So now once you have reached that conclusion that there's no such thing as American exceptionalism in the classic sense of what it's supposed to mean, not the Orwellian sense of redefining terms to mean the opposite of what they're supposed to mean, that's when America starts to go into retreat. And from that, you can draw a direct line from that statement to where we are today. Because when Obama took over, America truly was an exceptional nation. It truly was leading the free world. Look, we had unfortunate wars in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. We can debate whether or not they were the proper wars to get into. We can debate whether or not they were prosecuted properly. But even throughout those times, regardless of what position you took on those wars, there was no doubt that what is at the root of fighting those wars was to maintain the rule-based, American-led world order so that America could project power around the world, defend its allies, strike fear in its enemies. And that's what we did. And Obama began to unravel that. And of course, the best example of that is the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, and the appeasement of Iran. That deal is the definition of America in retreat. And that is probably the single worst foreign policy decision America has ever had since the Second World War. And it's that mentality, the statement of there is no such thing as American exceptionalism and the appeasement of Iran, those two things combined has led us to where we are today. It is not irreversible. It is absolutely reversible. But it requires, as Jesse points out, the proper leadership. And it requires bringing the American people together, rallying towards a common cause. Those are two heavy lifts.
Let me conclude today's show by a couple of comments. Number one, we have 7 months to go to the end of the Biden presidency.
Well, they've ended the first term anyway.
The first term okay. And that's very problematic because in this weakened state, we're fair game with a weakened leadership, a diminished president, a divided country, enemies who united against us, allies who don't trust us. We're in serious trouble for the next 6 and 7 months. And you never know what rabbit they'll pull out of the hat to destabilize and hurt this country. That's one. Number two, I don't know that the world has 6 or 7 months to deal with the threat of a nuclear Iran. And I submit to you, if there's a nuclear-armed Iran, then everything changes. The world changes. It's not just about the Middle East. The world changes. Europe is at risk. Asia is at risk. The balance of power throughout the entire world is at risk. They're a renegade nation. They're true believers. They believe in the nonsense of martyrdom. They think they have a God-given right to slay anybody who thinks differently than they do, looks differently than they do, worships a different God, or even worships the same God but in a different way. These are dangerous people. They're in the insanity of allowing them to have nuclear weapons is what Obama and Biden have given to this world. So if we're around in 50 or 100 years and we haven't blown ourselves up because you have a renegade nation that believes in a suicide mission, then the record will be clear that it was all on Obama and Biden for not stopping that. And they've made no meaningful effort to do it. The first deal was a sham.
The JCPOA
was a sham.
Provides a legal path for Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon.
Well, it's a sad commentary that we have to round this show up with that. I'm hopeful that somebody will wake up and stop Iran before it's too late. I want to thank our listeners for joining us once again with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show.
Let the Record Show is on the air.